York. She is a mother of 3, and she has been released. Her husband, they still have unanswered questions about whether he's in captivity and where. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. I'll see you shortly for World News Tonight. In the meantime, for many of you in the East, your local news standing by. I'm David Muir in New York. I'll see you for World News Tonight.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
And our breaking news coverage continues here on ABC News Live. I'm Kana Whitworth in Los Angeles. Thank you for joining us. So as you saw there, a 6th group of hostages released in Gaza. These are images. The IDF citing the Red Cross reporting now 10 Israeli abductees have been freed. We're also seeing numbers as well as 16 hostages, though, have been freed. This also includes 4 Thai citizens. So you also have these 2 Russian-Israeli hostages that were released as well. So it's a total of 16. This also comes as news as there was an American woman released, a 49-year-old mother of 3, Liat Benin, who was released. Now, all of this is happening as talks are underway right now to extend this very fragile truce agreement between Israel and Hamas. Yet again, the current deal is set to expire in just a matter of hours. And as it's set to expire in just a matter of hours, there are still, at latest count, at least 102 people being held hostage right now by Hamas. So I want to get right to our ABC News contributor and national security defense analyst, Mick Mulroy, for more on this. So, Mick, as we're watching this video and we're seeing this release, I think top of mind for a lot of people right now, first and foremost, is that we do have this American woman now who has been released. And there has been a lot of talk about how Americans could be used as a negotiation tactic here. But now, Mick, we see this woman, again, 49 years old. She has ties to the Northeast here in the United States and a mother of 3. But Mick, as she's released, by all accounts, she has left behind her husband, and her husband, according to Matt Gutman, was wounded when he was taken hostage. So how does that play in?
So, Kana, I do think, despite what the White House said, that there is a growing concern that Americans are being used as leverage. The biggest indicator is there's still, we believe 8 or 9 left, and they were not released in this initial truce agreement. And we do not know whether it's going to be extended. And ultimately, we will know if it is extended, and it takes a long time for these Americans to come out. It would indicate that they were used in that way.
All right, Mick Mulroy, I'll be back with you here in just a moment. I now want to go to our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, who is live for us in Tel Aviv and has been covering all of this. Matt, as all eyes are on this latest hostage release, we know now this American woman has just been released, and it's my understanding that you had a chance to speak with some of her family members prior to this. What did they tell you?
Kana, they were obviously happy that their daughter, Liat Benin, was being released, but they're also very concerned, and I just heard you speak about their husband, her husband, Aviv, who was wounded on October 7th in that attack. He was apparently part of the security team in that kibbutz of Nir Oz, and he was shot. They know that he had bled. They had DNA swabs of his blood. They don't know what his condition is right now, and the concern is for the other 100 who are still left in Gaza. What is their condition? What are they surviving on? And the more time passes, the less chance that people think that they will survive this. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure being brought to bear on the Israeli government to do whatever it can to free the rest of the hostages. Now, there are different categories for hostages. Women and children were the easiest to get out. Hamas was most willing to let them go. The question is, what about men? What about men who were in security teams or soldiers? What about female soldiers? That is going to be much more thorny, and I assume that that is why the negotiations in Qatar are taking place right now with CIA Director Burns there, but also with the mediation of the Qataris and the Egyptians, is taking a little bit of time to figure out how to take this existing ceasefire that has worked with a couple of hiccups over the past 6 days, but it has worked, and how to extend it. Israel has said it's willing to extend it possibly another 4 days, and then that's it. They're going back to the war, and I'm told that the ramp up to the war is not going to be gradual. It's going to be immediate and ferocious, according to the Israelis. So really, the next few hours are going to be very important in dictating where we go in the next week or even weeks ahead, Kana.
Certainly a tenuous few hours ahead. Matt Gutman, our thanks to you, as always, for your reporting. And now we go to our ABC News senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang. Selena, so we know that there's still Americans being held hostage, and it's my understanding that as you're having conversations with U.S. officials, they're saying, you know, they're not really being used as negotiation tools here. Yet we've also heard from other experts who say that Americans, you know, can hold a higher price in these negotiations.
Well, look, U.S. officials, they've been stressing to me for days now that there is simply a lack of information about the Americans that remain unaccounted for. They're very specific in using that word unaccounted for. With the release now of one more American woman today, they believe that there is still one American woman unaccounted for and 7 American men accounted for. But they do not know where they are, where they're being held, who's holding them, whether it's Hamas or other groups, or what their conditions are. They do not have proof of life on any of these unaccounted for Americans. Now, the president, he's been intensely focused on this. The Biden administration is, of course, relieved that one more American has been released, but there is more work to be done. U.S. officials say that they are working hour by hour with partners in the region to try and get this pause extended until all of the remaining hostages are released. To your point, officials are stressing that they do not believe Americans are being held for any specific additional leverage. The White House, Kate, is also focused on what happens when this pause ends, if it's extended again, and then when it ultimately ends again. The White House has issued its most forceful statement to Israel, saying that they need to be surgical and targeted in their approach to avoid displacing more Palestinian people and to avoid this from turning into a worse humanitarian crisis. U.S. officials also say that the U.S. has made clear to Israel that they want this increased amount of humanitarian aid getting into Gaza to remain that way even when the fighting resumes. And U.S. officials say that so far in their conversations with the Israelis, they have been receptive. Kina.
And Selena, we know that Secretary of State Antony Blinken is now making his 3rd trip overseas as well. This is happening, of course, as we know, the president has been just been briefed on this latest hostage release while he was on Air Force One on his way to Colorado. And also, I'm hoping you can elaborate for me that we know that some of these American families are actually on Capitol Hill, and they're meeting with the House Foreign Affairs Committee in a roundtable discussion today. So do we think that collectively, with all of these meetings, considering that Antony Blinken, again, making his 3rd trip over there in these tenuous hours without a ceasefire agreement, do we think that any of that will move the needle?
Well, Kana, I think it all rests on these very tense diplomatic negotiations that are happening with those regional partners. We know that getting this deal, which has now been extended, took weeks of what the administration has described as excruciating and painstaking negotiations. So we are in this final stretch. We do not yet know if that type of negotiation has been successful. But the U.S. obviously wants to see this pause extended. The president has said that it is his top priority to get all of the hostages released, working around the clock, the team, to try and make that happen here. Now, the U.S. has reaffirmed that they do not believe a general ceasefire would be in the best interest, that would only benefit Hamas, but they do want to see this pause extended so the hostages can be released.
All right, Selena Wang live for us at the White House. Thank you so much, Selena. We want to go back now to Tel Aviv. ABC News' Inez de la Katara is there for us. So, Inez, we just have this list now of, again, these 16 people that were just released. But, Inez, another piece of news that came out today is that Hamas is saying that this 10-month-old that was believed to be in custody, Hamas claiming that this baby was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Have we heard any comment yet from the IDF or U.S. officials on that?
Hey, Kena, yeah, so the IDF saying they are very much investigating that, and we cannot independently confirm their claim. This is all Hamas saying that these 3 hostages were killed, they say, as a result of Israeli shelling. Again, we just don't know, and there will likely be no way to confirm that. So we are waiting for an IDF statement on that. They did give us a little bit of guidance earlier in the night, so I'll read you their statement. They say, "We are examining the information that Hamas publishes regarding the members of the Biba's family. The responsibility for the safety of the abductees lies with Hamas. It endangers the abductees, including children and women, and they must be returned." And that is, I think, the IDF trying to point the finger back at Hamas here in claiming that Israel is behind what they say are these 3 killings, is trying to blame Israel, and the IDF, they're pointing the finger squarely back at Hamas and saying these people shouldn't be in Gaza to begin with. Essentially, there are very real concerns about the safety safety of hostages, of course, and their well-being. And you know, we've been hearing from the hostages who have been released about the conditions they've been kept in and their experiences, hearing shelling and fearing for their lives, of course, but also the conditions they were kept in. So we heard from one man who says his two nieces were surviving on just a piece of bread a day each. We've been hearing that some of them, especially towards the end of their time in captivity, were going hungry. And shelling, you know, again, we don't know if that's what really happened here, and we don't know what really happened here, but shelling, we know, has been a concern. And we heard that incredible story of that Russian national who was released earlier in the week, who was freed actually because of shelling, and he was able to escape captivity. He was actually free in Gaza for 4 days before he was reapprehended by locals there in Gaza, who handed him back over to Hamas. But just gives you a sense of the situation there, and you know, should the fighting resume, and we are expecting that it will. The Israeli Prime Minister earlier today saying that there is no way they will not fight until the end. So when the war resumes, you know, there's going to be very real concerns for the hostages who remain there, and that's why you're seeing this rush to get so many people out as quickly as possible.
Right, the IDF, a chief of staff, saying we know what needs to be done and we are ready for the next step in terms of restarting this war. But Inez, let's talk about what's happening here. As many of these hostages are being released, we know they're facing really another battle, because so many of them, these women and these children, they've been released, but they've left behind their husbands, their fathers, and as we're now learning, at least one husband and father is believed to be wounded. So as you're talking with people, how does that weigh on them?
Yeah, Kana, and there was even one day, I think it was a couple nights ago, where all of the hostages who were released, who were of course all women and children, all had a father or a husband who was held back, who was still in Gaza. And we're hearing more and more from these hostages speaking out about how they don't feel complete here because some of their loved ones are remaining in Gaza. We know the Israelis had been firmly opposed to any separation of mothers and children. In fact, that was part of the holdup a couple nights ago as to why there was a delay in terms of releasing the hostages. When it comes to the men, though, there could be some good news on the horizon. With we know that Hamas has offered to extend the truce here. We know the Israelis are, you know, considering it. Unclear if they'll accept it. It does appear to be promising. But Israeli media was reporting that Hamas was offering to now include older men as part of the hostages they're going to be releasing. You know, they've divided the hostages into different categories. Soldiers, for instance, are one category. Women and children were clearly a category. Older men are one category. And so we could start to see, if this truce is extended, older men also being released.
All right, Inez, thank you so much. Let's bring in Mick Mulroy to help us analyze some of that. So, Mick, when you just hear Inez say that, if they're reporting there that Hamas is also now at least considering extending this truce, it sounds like the IDF is as well, and that potentially they would be willing to negotiate the release of older men, keeping in mind here that at least by our last count, they still have 102 people that they are holding hostage. So, Mick, what do you make of that?
So, Kana, I think it's to be expected when it comes to categories of people who obviously shouldn't be hostage in the first place. But when it comes to categories, the last category that would likely be released is military-age fighting men or soldiers, which could, of course, include males and females. So the older men would fall into the category right before that category. So between women and children and the fighting-aged people. And I think that is what we're seeing here now. So if the Americans that are left fall into that category, older, non-fighting age, then we should see them come out if this truce is extended within the next few days. If not, then I do think it indicates that they are being used as leverage. We don't know. Obviously, we hope the White House official was correct and they are not. But this will come out. We will find out just how long they keep these Americans. And that will, in my opinion, determine whether they were being used for leverage different and apart from the remaining hostages or the other hostages.
Certainly, and updating the numbers here, so it appears now they have at least 145 held, and at this point the count is 102 released, and there's also, again, 8 Americans that are believed to be held right now. So, Inez, what do we know about these Americans?
Yeah, so, you know, the Americans there, I think it was certainly very good news that these Americans, that there was at least one American, there was one American released this evening. So far, there had been just one American released as part of the truce agreement. That was 4-year-old Abigail Adon. There were 2 Americans who had been released prior to the truce agreement, the 2 women from Chicago, the mother and the daughter from Chicago. So good news that one more American has been released, but like you say, still 8 hostages, 8 American hostages being detained in Gaza, according to the White House. And I think you're going to see the White House continuing to push for all of the hostages to be released, but specifically the Americans. It's why you're seeing Americans involved in these negotiations. We know that CIA Director Bill Burns was in Doha to talk to Qatar. They have been instrumental here in terms of negotiating this agreement. So the White House is going to continue pushing for their release.
All right, Inez and Mick, thank you so much for your analysis and your reporting. And coming up next here, we have some more breaking news. ABC News exclusive reporting on what sources are saying an attorney for Donald Trump told him in the days leading up to the raid at Mar-a-Lago. That's next.
Whenever news breaks,
the crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
In Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We've seen tank after tank pouring into this area.
This is where it all began.
Bullet holes all up the wall.
Within minutes, the air raid sirens going off.
You can hear the sound of an explosion.
We are pinned down here.
Tonight, Israel waging a fierce bombardment of Gaza.
The Israel-Hamas War. For nonstop live coverage, stream ABC News Live.
Reporting from southern Israel.
From the front lines.
In downtown Ramallah.
In Beirut.
Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. ABC News Live.
We have more breaking news at this hour. Our investigative team here at ABC News breaking exclusive new reporting here on the classified documents case against Donald Trump. Sources telling ABC News that a current attorney for the former president had warned him in a meeting soon after he received a subpoena seeking classified material from his Mar-a-Lago estate that it would be a crime not to comply with it. Sources also saying that the attorney told investigators that the former president understood that warning. So ABC News senior reporter Catherine Faulders helped break this news and is joining us now from Washington. Catherine, thank you for being here with us. So first of all, I mean, how central could this information really be now in the special counsel's case?
Well, it could be extremely central to the case. Now, this lawyer that we're reporting on, Jennifer Little, she still remains one of Trump's lawyers in the Georgia probe. What we're reporting on has to do with the classified documents probe. She was involved in conversations early on after Trump received that subpoena from the Department of Justice demanding that he hand back to the government all classified documents that still remained in his possession. So she was advising Trump after this subpoena. And what we're told by sources who are describing what she told investigators investigators, what she told Smith's team, is that she very clearly told Trump that if he didn't comply with this subpoena, that it would be a crime. And important to this, as she tells investigators, according to our sources, is that Trump very clearly also understood what she was saying. So it goes to the heart of what Jack Smith here is trying to prove, and it could shed further light on essentially how the special counsel came to the conclusion that Trump knowingly violated the law.
So that alleged understanding here, but also, Catherine, Trump's general thinking is not only central to this case, but other cases as well, including the special counsel's election interference case against the former president.
That's right. I think what we've seen from all of our reporting on this, whether it be in special counsel Jack Smith's probe of the documents case or the January 6th matter, is that Smith's team has talked to multiple witnesses here. They have been able to talk to those closest to the former president, whether it be related to the documents and what he was doing in the final days of the White House, packing up boxes, what he was doing at Mar-a-Lago as it relates to their allegations of movements of boxes, whether he was directing people to do that. For example, we've seen similar tactics in the January 6th case, for example. We know that investigators have spoken to those closest to the former president, including our exclusive reporting earlier this week on his former Vice President Mike Pence, his former top White House lawyers. So they are getting a pretty decent window into exactly what Trump was doing during this time period, and we've seen those similarities across both of these investigations.
Right, what he was doing and what he was potentially thinking at that time. Catherine, thank you so much for your reporting. And so for more on this, I want to bring in our ABC News legal contributor and University of Baltimore law professor, Kimberly Whaley. So thank you so much for being with us, Kim. What is your take on that reporting that you just heard there? And from your position, why is this so valuable to the special counsel?
Well, it's extremely unusual to get this kind of direct testimony from an attorney. Remember, normally there's an attorney-client privilege that would attach that would keep this kind of information secret, because it sounds like this lawyer was giving her client, Donald Trump, advice as to the requirements of the law and how he should comply with the law. But a federal judge here in Washington back in March held that with respect to Ms. Little as well as Evan Corcoran, an exception to that privilege applied, the crime fraud exception. So this is very difficult information to get. But as Catherine says, all of the crimes that are alleged in the Mar-a-Lago indictment require a showing of intent. And I think Donald Trump's an intent to violate the law. Donald Trump's traditional response has been to these kinds of allegations, well, it was my right under the Presidential Records Act to do this. These are my documents. That's difficult to persuade a jury that that's the truth when it turns out now there's a lawyer telling him that would be a crime, not just to keep the information, their allegations under the Espionage Act, but also obstruction of justice, to know that the FBI has an investigation ongoing, that there's a criminal implication here, the Department of Justice wants this information, and to knowingly decide, allegedly, to not turn it over.
And so to your point of how unusual this is, when it comes to his defense, I mean, could Trump then refute his own lawyer's claims?
Well, sure. I mean, that's going to depend on whether his lawyers in that case, which it sounds like Ms. Little was representing him in the Fulton County, Georgia case, decide to have him testify, which is a big decision in any criminal case. He could say that never happened. According to other reporting that I've read, Evan Corcoran, the lawyer who took over for Ms. Little at her suggestion, has contemporaneous notes of these conversations. So I'm sure Jack Smith's team are trying to validate or corroborate her statements as well as Mr. Corcoran's statements with an idea that they would want to impeach Mr. Trump if Mr. Trump does say, listen, that never happened.
All right, Kim Whaley, thank you so much for your expertise as always. And coming up next here, we have a story about an NFL player's very unique carpool, how he hitched a ride to a game on Sunday. That's after the break.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
on the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital, destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Give it to me. Give it to me.
Wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Getting you behind the stories as they happen. ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Streaming free on ABC News Live.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
From America's #1 news source comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and it can customize to you and your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience what all the buzz is about. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Reporting from LaGuardia Airport, I'm Gio Benitez. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Okay, you know, commuting to work can be a beast for all of us, and it sure was this Sunday for Arizona Cardinals linebacker Jesse Luketa, who could have actually missed Sunday's game against the Rams if it wasn't for the kindness of some fans. So he actually got a flat tire on the way to the game, and he pulled over at a gas station. And when that happened, he saw a family that was wearing Cardinals jerseys, and so he took a chance and he asked for a ride. Here's what he said.
So as I'm sitting there, I look to my right. I see a family. They're in Cardinals gear. It looks like they're going to the stadium. So I'm like, I have absolutely nothing to lose. Pull my window down. I just yell out, "You guys going to the stadium?" He looks at me a little crazy. He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm a player. I got a flat tire. Can you guys help me out? I need a ride to the stadium."
Oh, man. So there is also a picture now of him with the kids from that family. He went ahead and posted it on social media. He also says that he plans on repaying the family for their generosity with tickets to their next home game. I love that story. There's a lot more news ahead here on ABC News Live. In today's big story, the last planned group of hostages released in Gaza as negotiations race now to extend this fragile truce agreement. What's at stake for Israel and Hamas just hours before the current deal is set to expire? Also in our spotlight, the artificial intelligence fumble for Sports Illustrated. Our panel weighs in on accusations that the magazine wasn't being honest about who was writing its articles.
Mike, the situation. What a situation that guy was.
There was upwards of 10 naked, beautiful women in my room at one particular time. I was probably a good 6 Percocet 30s deep while on live TV. I've been through some really tough times.
The situation, drugs and sex on the Jersey Shore.
People think they know about the situation. You have no idea.
Now streaming on Hulu.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
on the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital, destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
Everybody in that home is okay.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. We are here at fashion's biggest night out.
What's happening today? YouTube has unveiled a new set of policies.
What people are talking about, the new ad campaign.
Fast, straightforward,
With some fun in between.
a real-life Barbie dream house.
A name change for the Wienermobile.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning
America's #1 early morning news.
on ABC News Live.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
It's lunchtime in America, so what are we serving up?
Well, how about everything you need to know?
You know, that sounds pretty good.
Give it to me. Your health, your money, breaking news, pop culture, with the biggest stars, music, trends, and of course, good food. GMA 3, what you need to know. A third hour of GMA in the afternoon.
So join us, afternoons.
For everything you need to know. I love that.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
ABC News, America's #1 news source.
We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We've seen tank after tank pouring into this area.
This is where it all began.
Bullet holes all up the wall.
Within minutes, the air raid sirens going off.
You can hear the sound of an explosion.
We are pinned down here.
Tonight, Israel waging a fierce bombardment of Gaza.
The Israel-Hamas War. For nonstop live coverage, stream ABC News Live.
Reporting from southern Israel, from the front lines in downtown Ramallah,
In Beirut.
wherever the story is, we'll take you there.
ABC News Live.
Well, the U.S. and Mideast partners racing to free more hostages in Gaza, and that includes Americans. I'm Kana Whitworth here in Los Angeles, and that is our big story today. The last planned group of kidnapped victims freed today with just hours remaining until the current truce expires. What's at stake here as negotiators push to extend this fragile ceasefire agreement yet again? And in our spotlight, foul play for Sports Illustrated. Our panel weighs in on the legendary magazine now under fire for an apparent AI experiment gone wrong. We, of course, begin with our big story, though. 16 more hostages released by Hamas on the final day of this temporary truce agreement between Israel and Hamas, bringing the total number of hostages released today to 16. So we have a breakdown for you. We're told right now that these hostages include 10 Israeli abductees. That includes an Israeli American, as well as 4 Thai citizens and 2 Russian Israeli hostages who were released earlier in the day. So we're joined now by our former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East and ABC News national security analyst Mick Mulroy. Mick, thank you so much for being here with us. So let's start with this. We know that right now Hamas and the IDF are at least both saying they could potentially agree to extend this truce a little bit. But Mick, we just got some information in here that I find fascinating. I think you will too. It says that the rocket and drone attacks on U.S. bases in both Iraq and Syria stopped when this ceasefire began. But already tonight, 2 U.S. officials are confirming that earlier today there was another rocket attack on Syria already. So what does that say to you?
So, Kana, I agree. That is interesting because it really does show how coordinated this is with Iran and how Iran, in many ways, is orchestrating this. Those groups in Syria and Iraq that have been firing on our positions are Iranian-backed, just like Hamas, just like Hezbollah, and just like the Houthis. So it does indicate that, and it also indicates that there might be a feeling that this agreement might not be extended. I think we all hope that it is, especially for the hostages, but also to get humanitarian aid in large numbers. Mm-hmm. But this could indicate that at least they believe this is going to be the end of this truce.
That is deeply concerning, and already, according to our reporting, that would be the 74th such incident since October 17th. So they're really racking it up there. Also, Mick, we saw that these two hostages that were released earlier today because of their ties to Russia. So what does that signal to you about the relationship between the bad actors in the region and their collaborations?
So it does indicate there is collaboration. Of course, Iran and Russia are very close, and Russia is therefore very close to Hamas and has provided them a lot of, quite frankly, political cover in this, even to the point of really joining it, at least philosophically. So this indicates to me that they do view the nationality of the hostages they took, even the ones that have dual citizenship, very specifically. They let them go on their own, and they said they were doing this as a favor for President Putin, which goes back to the issue of how they view Americans. I don't know whether they're viewing Americans as leverage, but it certainly indicates to me that they are, because they view these hostages differently and they use them for different reasons.
All right, so we know that one dual citizen, an Israeli-American, was released today, and at our count, at least 8 Americans are still being held. But also, Mick, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he's in the region again today. This is his 3rd trip. Also, this is after the CIA director went to Qatar for meetings as well. So, Mick, if this truce is actually over, what information does the U.S. government have about it? And then how will they move forward with Israel as they, again, say they will start the war right away?
So it's important to note that the Secretary of State used to work for the current director of the CIA. They both worked in the State Department when the director was the deputy of the State Department. So they're very close. And so their actions, as you would expect, would be very coordinated. I still think that the U.S. is doing everything they can to extend this truce, to get our hostages back, of course, to get all hostages back, but also the humanitarian aid in. But if it can't be renewed or extended, I think Secretary Blinken is going to be very specific with the Israeli government that we expect a different way ahead when it comes to combat operation, to be much more specifically targeted, to avoid in the best way possible civilian casualties, something that I don't think we saw at the beginning stages of this campaign. And I think Secretary Blinken is going to bring that to the discussion, as well as what's going to happen when combat operations is over. Will there be a security force? What's the political way ahead? Are we going to head toward a 2-state solution? It's possible Israel doesn't want to listen to that right now, but that is something that I think he will be talking about.
The future of the region of much concern for U.S. officials as well. But also, you touched on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. It is growing worse by the day. Is the U.S. also urging this as a reason to try to convince both sides to continue this pause here? And I mean, I know that there's concerns about disease now, and the weather is getting colder as well.
That's absolutely right, Kana. So right now, about 200 trucks are coming in a day, and that is what they agreed to. But before the conflict started, there was around 400 trucks a day. So it's woefully inadequate to take care of the people in Gaza. And quite frankly, there are people starving. There's 2 million people live in Gaza. Only around 40,000 max are in Hamas. So we have to be very cognizant of that. The United States, of course, is delivering aid, but more aid needs to get in there. And it's not going to be able to get there just by using the Rafah crossing. They're going to have to look at a maritime approach, because it helps to get the distribution across Gaza. That's something I think that the United States is going to be pushing for. And to your point, it's winter and it's going to get colder, and about 1 million people inside Gaza don't have shelter. So that's very important, and all the reason why this truce should continue and humanitarian aid should get in there uninterrupted.
Absolutely. Mick Mulroy, our thanks as always to you. I want to bring our big story to our panel here. So joining us today now is our ABC News contributor and Sirius XM radio host Mike Muse, along with ABC News political contributor and former Trump administration official Sarah Isker, Democratic strategist and president of Next Gen America Christina Sinsoon Ramirez, and ABC News Zorine Shah is here with us as well in Los Angeles. Thank you all for being with us. So Mike, let's start here with you. So it's really interesting, as we have discussed this over the last few days, these videos that news agencies are gathering every day in the release of these hostages. But then we see this angle that is released by Hamas. Certainly a propaganda campaign here that is really underlining all of these releases. And one thing that really stood out to me in these last couple of days, Mike, first of all, yesterday we saw a girl released with her little dog that she carried out. And then today you see them, sort of helping the women out of the van, handing them a bottle of water. What do you make of these videos?
What I make of these videos is that it is actually empathizing to a lot of what Hamas wants, is for them to be viewed as empathetic. And what I mean by that is you see this discourse happening here in the United States with a lot of individuals who are denouncing that Hamas is even a terrorist organization. There are a lot of individuals who are pro-Palestinian activists who are reframing Hamas as a resistance organization. And so when you couple the propaganda images that you're seeing over when the releases of Israeli hostages with also to the celebration of individuals celebrating Hamas, individuals being released, coupled over here in the United States, it is beginning to be a really difficult conversation with tons of nuance.
Certainly. And Sarah, to you. So there are American hostages that we still have no status update on at all. Antony Blinken is over there now, but experts have told us that Americans are sometimes worth more to Hamas, yet the White House is saying they're not being used as negotiation tools. What do you think?
Well, that's exactly right. And Secretary Blinken has also said that they do not necessarily have proof of life on a lot of these hostages remaining. There's this balance to be struck, even on this week, last Sunday, when Secretary Blinken was on the show, he was asked specifically about one of the little girls who was being held hostages. And you could see in his face this concern that if he spent too long talking about her, she might become more valuable. So it's a huge problem as we try to humanize these hostages and show the atrocity that Hamas committed, while at the same time not making them more valuable so that they're kept hostage longer.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. And Zoreen, to you, you have some reporting now on the Muslim American reaction here at home. President Biden actually apologizing to the community for his words in Gaza.
Yeah, Kana, so this group had been wanting and demanding more empathy from the president for a while, the empathizer-in-chief as he's known, right? And then suddenly it happens in this highly emotional, very tearful moment in the White House. But how it happened actually hasn't been reported out until we did it just in the last few hours, actually. So it happened late last month. 5 Muslim Americans went to the White House. According to one participant, another, her name is Suzanne Barakat. She's a prominent Muslim advocate. She's been through incredible loss. She's lost 3 loved ones. She confronted the president. She said, I have lost these people. We have a common loss here. And she starts listing off the people the president has lost as well. And then she says, you have lacked empathy in this moment. You are the empathizer in chief, essentially, is what she's saying. And she says he has not shown empathy when it comes to Palestinian suffering, in her opinion. Now, the president, the room gets very quiet, and the president says he is sorry. He says he needs to do better. He says he's disappointed in himself, which is huge for this group. Of course, they say that he has not met him when it comes to policy, when it comes to their demands for a ceasefire.
And also, Christina, to you, the Biden administration is sending what appears to be at least a new message to Israel about keeping their attacks more targeted when this fighting resumes. They're certainly concerned about the global perceptions of this war.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of disagreement within the Democratic Party itself. We're seeing a whole cohort of progressive and concerned senators led by Senator Chris Van Hollen, who called on the administration to make sure that if they were going to greenlight more funds and resources to the Israeli government, that they were going to have to deal with what they called the unacceptable number of civilian casualties, that there needed to be put barriers on the Israeli government and military because they see what has happened in Gaza and Palestinian suffering to not take into account just how extreme things have gotten. And so I think that we're going to continue to see shifts within the Democratic Party. Also, there's an election upcoming. And, I work with young voters. The polling shows that 70% of young voters are displeased with the administration's handling of Gaza and Palestine. So I think we're going to continue to see shifts. There's pushing and pulling on all sides, even within the Democratic Party and its leadership on this issue.
And if we've seen anything on this issue, we have seen that voices matter, and they are changing the hearts and minds of leaders across this country right now. Mike, Sarah, Christina, and Zoreen, thank you so much. And coming up next here, did Sports Illustrated fumble the ball and have AI-generated authors on their websites? Well, that's our spotlight after the break.
Whenever news breaks,
The crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
When the announcer calls my name, the world almost fades away.
It's the biggest, it's the most famous dog event there is.
Welcome to Crufts, the world's greatest dog show.
The competition in dog dancing is very stiff.
Here, every dog has its day on the dance floor.
Dancing with my dog is the closest thing to magic.
Our winner, Crufts 2023.
The Secret Life of Dancing Dogs, now streaming on Hulu.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
They're taking AI-generated content, putting AI-generated heads on these people, and now we just got fake humans doing sports? That is wild. Oh.
I mean, if Pat McAfee is mad, maybe we all need to be mad. In our spotlight today, Sports Illustrated is the latest publication under fire for reportedly using content on his website generated by artificial intelligence and AI-generated authors. On Monday, the Futurism website reported that Sports Illustrated used stories for product reviews that had authors that could not be identified except on the Sports Illustrated website, and that some of those content creators on the Sports Illustrated website were using profile photos that were for sale on a website that sells AI-generated headshots. Yeah. So the Arena Group, the parent company of Sports Illustrated, is saying those claims are not accurate. They said that in a tweet, but also saying in part that the articles in question were product reviews and were licensed content from an external third-party company, Advon Commerce. Advon has assured us that all of the articles in question were written by and edited by humans. The statement goes on to say that Sports Illustrated did learn that Advon had writers use a pen or a pseudonym in certain articles to protect author privacy. Actions we strongly condemn. So Sports Illustrated then later said that they removed all of their content from the website and that they have since ended their partnership with Advon Commerce. ABC also reached out, and we have not heard back yet. So I want to bring back our panel, Mike, Sarah, Christina, and joining us is our ABC News contributor and op-ed columnist for the LA Times, LZ Granderson. And LZ, I have a feeling that you have some strong feelings about this. What does this do? I mean, Sports Illustrated used to kind of be like the standard for sports journalism.
wasn't kind of the standard, it was the standard. And the writing was the reason why it was the standard, which is why I and so many other sports journalists and journalists in general are just so upset that it's Sports Illustrated, because it was a beacon. True, it said sports, but the writing was so universally appreciated that it stretched across many disciplines. And so this one really hurts. And, you know, it's another wake-up call for us in this industry, because just as we saw our brothers and sisters with the Actors Guild, as well as the Writers Guild and Directors Guild, content creators, even journalists, are vulnerable to AI and corporate America and corporate media trying to squeeze every last dime out of us, or sometimes not even including us.
I mean, and you're so right about that. I mean, I actually remember, like, I loved getting on a plane with my new Sports Illustrated, and I remember vividly this Tim Lincecum article I read. I mean, it spoke to my heart. And Sarah, there is a place sometimes for artificial intelligence, but in this case, with these accusations, it's a tremendous threat to journalism.
Well, this is affecting other industries as well. I'm a lawyer, and we're seeing lawyers try to cut corners, send in a motion to a judge that they clearly had ChatGPT right. They're coming up with hallucinated cases in some of those motions. Judges are having to issue orders, either banning the use of AI in their courtrooms or saying that any use of AI or ChatGPT-like programs must be disclosed to the court, because you had court personnel trying to chase down cases that didn't exist. It wasted a lot of time.
Wow. And Christina, to you, a lot of publications are deploying artificial intelligence, to Sarah's point. Now, some people are using it for research or for graphics, but there's also a case going on in New York City right now with some of the most well-known authors that are very concerned about this, like John Grisham and Jodi Picoult.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge with what we saw especially happen, you know, Sarah mentioned lawyers, we're talking about journalists, we're talking about authors, content creators, but especially for journalism. This is also a question of ethics and integrity. When I get my news, I like to know who the reporter is behind it, right? Because they have a certain code of ethics that they operate under. And when it's under AI, they're not operating under any code of ethics. And we're living in a time when people already distrust media, where they're getting their information, and this is just going to spur that and grow that. And so this is why it's so dangerous, and also why it is so good. I think the hope I see is the Actors Guild, the Writers Guild, fighting to protect their authenticity, their ownership, their name, their creations. And I would love to see that extended to journalism, because I think we're going to continue to see this. If this made it to Sports Illustrated, we don't even know everywhere else it is or it already is.
Right, and the public needs to be able to hold their journalists accountable as well. Mike, this is clearly a scary revelation for some, though, but do you agree with Christina that this could create a lot of distrust for people in terms of journalism and media? And I kind of feel like there's already a ton of distrust there right now.
One, yes, there is a distrust in media, but I've been waiting for this moment to come in terms of crossing this frontier. I call this what's called fast journalism. I think it's important that we know the distinction that this wasn't actually in the magazine itself, but it was on their website, and in particular on reviews. I've always thought when generative AI started coming through, and that's essentially what ChatGPT is that media and publications would use this to cut corners, and particularly those who have blogs, work in the blog space, and get stories and articles out quickly in the digital space, that they would start using generative AI in order to create fast articles and fast journalism to respond to things quickly. But now what they're realizing with this lawsuit that's coming out and what's highlighted in Sports Illustrated is that you cannot replace humans and the human touch when it comes to nuance, when it comes to writing. So I'm not necessarily so much afraid that generative AI was to eliminate actual journalism as it is more so a cautionary tale to media companies that you actually can't cut the corners and not use real human beings as journalists because you have to be able to get the nuance as established with it.
Yeah, don't outsource that reporting. Mike, Sarah, Christina, and LZ, thank you so much, and stay with us. Boy, do we have a story coming up here in our last call. Okay, you know that presents, they can be under the Christmas tree, but what else is in your tree? You might have some unwanted visitors. We'll talk about that when we come back.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
on the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm. You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7 straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Give it to me. Give it to me.
Tonight, finding and freeing all the hostages in Gaza. What will it take? Plus, tracking the bitter cold sweeping across the country. More Americans turn to the most watched program on television. World News Tonight with David Muir.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
Everybody in that home is okay.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. We are here at fashion's biggest night out.
What's happening today? YouTube has unveiled a new set of policies.
What people are talking about. The new ad campaign.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
A real-life Barbie dream house.
A name change for the Wienermobile.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
From America's #1 news source comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and it can customize to you and your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience what all the buzz is about. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Reporting from Buckingham Palace, I'm James Longman. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Okay, it's time now for our last call. It's a bit of a nightmare for Christmas for some people. A woman and her family had the fright of their lives when they found millions, if you want to call them creepy crawlies, you can, in their tree. It's a TikTok. It went viral, and it shows all their branches. And so it's like a little, that first of all is like an egg sack full of praying mantises. And it almost looked like a decoration, right? This woman is saying, beware if you're going to get a real tree. They had a serious infestation. So now people collecting their trees are cautioned. Oh my gosh, that's so many, to look again for that little walnut-sized brown mass, because then they can turn in to be, like I said, a giant egg sack. So whew, there it is. I want to bring back my panel, and everyone's joining us here. It's my understanding, though, that Sarah, you wouldn't hate this so much? Is that true? You like my mom and you hold the spiders?
Oh, yeah. I mean, spiders in my household are cherished creatures. Think about the favors that these spiders and these praying mantises could do for you. If you don't like bugs, guess what they eat? They eat bugs. They're very efficient at it. Far better than any pest control. This is, I mean, organic to the max, right? So I would welcome the praying mantises. They would have a special little house in the corner where they could do their work.
Oh my gosh, there's so many of them though, and they are bugs. I don't know. And you know what I keep thinking about, Christina, is I was like, don't they bite the males' heads off? Like, how many times do you want to bite your husband's head off during the holidays?
I mean, I was like, this is why my word of advice, I'm like, Sarah, I love nature. I'm a big environmentalist, but I don't want a million praying mantises in my house. So that's why I have a reusable tree. I looked up which was more environmentally friendly, and if you use them over and over again, no bugs, everybody, no bugs.
No bugs. I like nature too. I just like it outside. But Elsie, I'm still a real tree person.
I used to love real trees as well. It wasn't praying mantises that scared me off. I actually, when we lived in Arizona, brought in scorpions that were embedded in houseplants. And our house had a couple of scorpions by accident because of it. So my mind is now thinking that if I'm bringing something from the outside in, I'm bringing the outside in.
Okay, scorpions is way worse. Mike?
Well, this conversation is freaking me out. I bought a real Christmas tree last night and brought it home, and this was the biggest thing I had in my mind was, what if something is in there? And I kept thinking the whole National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation when the squirrel jumped out of the tree. But now I have to worry about squirrels now, praying mantis. I'm not going to sleep well tonight at all, just FYI, as I look at the tree in front of me.
Yeah, Mike, if you hear that funny squeaky noise, you know there might be something in your tree. All right, that's amazing. That's it for our last call. Thank you so much, Mike, Sarah, Christina, and LZ. And thank you so much for streaming with us. I'm Kana Whitworth. Follow us on ABC News Live on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and more. And coming up here at 7 p.m. Eastern, be sure to catch ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis for the day's biggest stories and the impact they have on you. The news never stops. Neither do we. Keep it right here on ABC News Live.
Families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
on the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital,
Destructive Cat 4 storm. You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
Everybody in that home is okay.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. We are here at fashion's biggest night out.
What's happening today? YouTube has unveiled a new set of policies.
What people are talking about. The new ad campaign.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
A real-life Barbie dream house.
A name change for the Wienermobile.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
Whenever, wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas, Edinburgh, Scotland. Reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi. Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw. We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City. Getting you behind the stories as they happen. ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights wherever you stream your news. Only on ABC News Live.
Everything is so fine, little bit of sunshine. Some more, just a little bit. Breathe more, just a little bit. Smile a little more, and I'm into it. I've been running through this strange life. Pictures on my phone, like everything is so fine, little bit of sunshine. Good morning, America.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
From America's #1 news source comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and it can customize to you and your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience what all the buzz is about. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Reporting from the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine, I'm Matt Gutman. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
I'm Kana Whitworth here in Los Angeles, and we begin here with some breaking news at this hour. A 6th group of hostages are now in the hands of Israeli officials. The IDF citing the Red Cross reporting 10 Israeli abductees have been freed. That includes an Israeli American. Also 4 Thai citizens. That is in addition to 2 Russian Israeli hostages who were released in a separate deal that was earlier today. So that brings the total of hostages freed to 102. And this comes as talks are still underway to extend extend this fragile temporary truce agreement between Israel and Hamas, with the current deal set to expire in just a matter of hours. So joining us right now is ABC News' Inez de la Catara. She's live for us in Tel Aviv. Inez, thank you for being with us. So we know ABC News has now at least retrieved this full list of these hostages who were released today. Their ages ranging from 13 years old to 57 years old. And Inez, among them is this Israeli-American woman. We know that she's a mother. What else can you tell us?
Hey, Kana, yeah, so that was certainly the big headline today. So 16 hostages released in all here, 10 Israelis, 2 dual Russian-Israeli citizens, and 4 Thai workers. And among them is an American woman. We understand that she is a mother of 3. Her husband is still being held hostage in Gaza. And we also know that, according to President Biden, that he has spoken to this American freed hostage now. So some good news there. There are still 8 American hostages being held in Gaza. The White House earlier this week had said that the number stood at 9. If with this freed woman now, we are now at 8 American hostages still being held in Gaza. We don't know, the condition they're in. Some of their families have been speaking out, frustrated that, they're still waiting on news regarding their loved ones. But we know the U.S. is continuing to push for everything to be done to bring those people home. The U.S. Involved in negotiations that are being held in Qatar to maybe extend this truce, Kana.
Yeah, we know one of their parents told U.S. officials today it's like a living hell. They have no idea how their loved ones are doing. Also, Inez, though, the humanitarian crisis continues to worsen there in Gaza. What is the latest on the aid coming into Gaza? President Biden, we know, tweeted today about airlifting more food and medical supplies to the region.
That's right. So we know the U.S. is going to be sending in relief flights here with aid shipments for Gaza. We know more and more trucks are getting in. But, as the fighting has stopped there in Gaza, we are getting a better sense of the situation on the ground and just the horrific and dire situations that people are living in as the IDF continues to lay siege to Gaza. Because as some aid is getting in, there's still, it's still just a drop in the ocean in terms of what's needed. Real concerns about the possibility of infectious diseases spreading. There have been warnings about that, how there are bodies that are still under the rubble that people don't have the equipment to get to, how people are living in UN shelters, and those are overcrowded shelters. They're living in close quarters. They don't have access to, the right medical equipment and medicine and things like that. So some real concerns about all of that, and growing calls for even more aid to be let in. So the White House is going to be sending in relief flights, and we'll have to keep an eye on that because we do expect the fighting to resume. The Israelis have been crystal clear that as soon as this temporary ceasefire ends, the fighting will resume. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu talking about how there would be no other way, that there is no way that they will not be fighting this through the end.
All right, Inez de la Catara, thank you so much for joining us from Tel Aviv, and as always, stay safe. So for some further analysis here on the Israel-Hamas war, I want to bring in our ABC News national security and defense analyst, Mick Mulroy, along with ABC News senior Pentagon reporter, Louis Martinez. Gentlemen, thank you for being here with us. So, Mick, let's start here with you. First of all, earlier today, these 2 Russian-Israeli dual citizens, both women, were released today. According to Inez, Hamas is saying this is part of like a favor to Putin. So what does that say to you about the bad actors in that region and their collaboration?
Well, Kana, to me, it indicates that Hamas definitely looks at the nationality of the hostages they have, and they use that accordingly. In this case, Russia is an advocate for Hamas. They are obviously a close ally of Iran who supports Hamas. And I think they did this deliberately, separately, to really show politically that that was the case. And I think that also indicates that they view Americans a specific way. And although we don't know, it is a concern by many that they are using Americans as leverage on the United States to put pressure on Israel to extend the truce or other things. And I think that this does indicate that the Hamas very much looks at these hostages separately.
As Inez has reported, they sort of put them into groups there, and we know that at least at this point, the 10 Americans are still believed to be held. So, Mick, let me ask you this. It sounds like, according to Inez, we could be on the brink here of extending this truce possibly. Both sides seem to have expressed some interest in that. But this is happening, Mick, as we know that Hamas is saying that this 10-month-old baby that was believed to be held captive, they say this baby was killed in an Israeli airstrike. And this family is saying this is part of a psychological campaign that our cruel enemies are conducting. So none of this has been verified by the IDF or by the U.S. But how do things like that play into these negotiations, especially considering that they are trying to extend this?
So to your point, Canna, we don't know what happened. I would expect Hamas would blame this on the IDF, whether it was their responsibility, their actions that caused the death, or even whether they're dead altogether. But certainly they're using this as a way to turn the Israeli population against the government of Israel for their initial shaping operations, which did, of course, destroy a lot of buildings. And we do know from other hostages that have been released, particularly the Israeli-Russian male that was released, that he was in places that were targeted. Of course, Israeli weren't targeting them on purpose, but it does show that the Hamas hostage keepers did not move them into places that would not have been targeted, quite frankly. So we don't know, and I think that's really important to point out. Hopefully it's not the case.
And we know that the IDF and U.S. officials are looking into that, and we will bring you the latest as soon as we know. Louis, to you. So to your reporting here, this is fascinating, Louis, that the rocket and drone attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria stopped when this ceasefire began. So what is the latest now, and what do you think that is happening there in the Middle East in terms of attacks on U.S. bases? What does that mean if this truce, is expanded at all?
No, that's right, Kana. We had seen a lull in all of these rocket and drone attacks being launched by Iranian-backed militia groups in Iraq and Syria against U.S. bases in those two countries, while this ceasefire was in effect for the hostage turnovers. But what we saw today was the first of these attacks in more than a week against a U.S. base in eastern Syria. This now makes up 74 of those attacks. But again, when you have a lull in activity against something, you have to see that there must be some linkage. But one of the places where we are not seeing linkage is from the Houthi militant group in Yemen. This is another one of these Iranian-backed groups in the Middle East that's a destabilizing force, and they continue with their actions either against commercial shipping or be it against U.S. Navy ships. What we saw earlier today was our reporting that the destroyer USS Carney in the southern Red Sea shot down another drone that was fired by the Houthis, just an indication that they are keeping up.
Certainly. Wow. Louis Martinez and Mick Mulroy, thank you for your expertise. We also have some more breaking news here this evening. Our investigative team here at ABC News breaking exclusive new reporting on the classified documents case against Donald Trump. Sources are telling ABC News that a current attorney for the former president had warned him in a meeting soon after he received a subpoena seeking the classified material from his Mar-a-Lago estate that it would be a crime not to comply with it. So sources are also saying the attorney told investigators that the former president understood that warning. ABC News senior reporter Catherine Falders helped break this story and has more from Washington.
This lawyer that we're reporting on is Jennifer Little. She's one of former President Trump's lawyers in the Georgia matter. This has to do with conversations that she had with former President Trump following the subpoena from the government demanding that he give all documents back, all classified documents back that remained in his possession at his estate in Mar-a-Lago. Jennifer Little very clearly says, according to our sources who have described what she told Jack Smith's investigators, that she clearly says that she told the former president that it would be a crime if he didn't give back these documents. Now, important to this also is that Little specifically recounts to investigators, according to our sources, that Trump also very clearly understood her warning. So what Little is allegedly telling Smith's team earlier this year could shed further light on how the special counsel came to accuse Trump of knowingly violating the law. Now, special counsel Jack Smith has said publicly in his indictment that Trump defied a subpoena by hiding more than 100 classified documents from the FBI and even his own legal team. And now we're learning, according to sources who have described this to us, that Little very clearly warned him of this. And again, said that Trump understood. This is important and it's central to Smith's case as they try and build a case that Trump was told multiple times, whether it be from his legal team, whether it be from top advisors, that he must comply with the subpoena. The special counsel is trying to show, and through witness testimony and through documents, that after Trump was told this, that he knowingly defied the subpoena and misled his legal team. Kana?
All right. Wow. Catherine Falders, thank you for your reporting. Also now, lawmakers on Capitol Hill say that tomorrow they will vote whether to expel embattled New York Republican Congressman George Santos. Santos faces nearly 24 federal charges and a scathing ethics report that accuses him of stealing campaign money for personal use. He has vowed not to resign. House Speaker Mike Johnson spoke earlier today about the vote.
What we've said as the leadership team is we're going to allow people to vote their conscience. I think it's the only appropriate thing we can do. I personally have real reservations about doing this. I'm concerned about a precedent that may be set for that.
Well, ABC News' Jay O'Brien is joining me now from Capitol Hill. Jay, thanks for being with us. We know Santos has really already survived 2 expulsion votes, but that was before this House Ethics Committee report, right? So now 2/3 of the chamber would have to vote in favor of removal. So what are you hearing from lawmakers?
Yeah, and that comes out to about 290 members voting to expel Santos. That's the threshold that would be needed to kick him out of the House of Representatives. And just to put in how big of a flip that would need to be, Kana, lawmakers had a vote to expel Santos earlier this month, and only about 180 Republicans and Democrats voted to kick him out of the House. So 100 plus members would need to change their votes. Now, I've talked to lawmakers who say in light of that scathing ethics report that showed that Santos allegedly used campaign funds for things like Botox and luxury purchases at stores and things of that nature, that they are now in favor of kicking him out of the House. I've also talked to others who say at this hour that they believe he should go through due process before he's kicked out. Here's what 2 lawmakers told me.
Those who are saying that he should have his day in court, he will, as it relates to facing those criminal charges. But for the purposes of continuing to serve in this body, we have seen enough evidence. We know that he needs to go.
We have a 4-seat majority. You're reducing our majority by 25%. I don't think that's very smart.
It's a political concern for you?
All of it. Everything's political.
So at the end there, Troy Nell saying he doesn't believe Santos should go because it would diminish the number of Republicans that they have that control the House of Representatives, Kana.
Right, with that slim majority, Republicans have to be concerned about this numbers game, that's for sure. So is Santos worried about being voted out? I mean, we know, Jay, he says he's not going to resign, but he's also said that he doesn't want to run for another term either.
Yeah, he's defiant at this hour, Kana. He says he's not going to resign. He says he wants to put lawmakers on the record as to whether or not he should be voted out. He's using that argument that it sets a precedent to expel someone before they're convicted, essentially as a shield tonight and going into that vote that's now scheduled for Friday. I can tell you, I spoke with a source close to Santos who describes their operation this week as a pirate ship and saying that the entire office, the congressman included, are going to, quote unquote, go down with the ship. And just to show you how defiant Santos is right now, he spoke with the Speaker of the House this weekend, in which the Speaker brought up the idea that Santos could resign, and Santos told him no, according to sources that talked to me and our Rachel Scott. And B, Santos is planning to hold a press conference at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, Kana, in which he is again expected to be defiant and say he's not going to resign.
All right, wouldn't be a day on Capitol Hill for you, Jay, would it, without a pirate ship metaphor? We appreciate your reporting, as always, Jay O'Brien. Coming up next here, the president touting Bidenomics on the campaign trail in Colorado today. What he is saying to one of his biggest Republican critics in her own district. That's next.
Whenever news breaks,
The crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine. Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
In Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story,
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
When the announcer calls my name, the world almost fades away.
It's the biggest, it's the most famous dog event there is.
Welcome to Crufts, the world's greatest dog show.
The competition in dog dancing is very stiff.
Here, every dog has its day on the dance floor.
Dancing with my dog is the closest thing to magic.
Our winner of Crufts 2023.
The Secret Life of Dancing Dogs, now streaming on Hulu.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Welcome back. President Biden hitting the campaign trail today, traveling to Colorado, visiting the district of one of his most outspoken Republican critics in Congress. The president touring a wind tower manufacturing facility in the city of Pueblo. It's a plant that is expanding thanks to money that they have received from the Inflation Reduction Act. He also took time to blast Republican Congressman Lauren Boebert. Again, it is her district, before her own constituents.
Both the Speaker and the Congressman voted against the law and spoke against the law. But now they're down there taking credit for it being built. As my mother would say, God love America.
Well, Boebert is a staunch supporter of Donald Trump and calls the Inflation Reduction Act a massive failure. I want to bring in ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang for more on this. So, Selena, we know that Boebert is really popular among the Republican base, but her last win was really close in 2022. And so I know that Democrats really consider this seat a major place for them to pick up one. What does it look like here for 2024?
Yeah, exactly. She began representing Colorado's 3rd district in 2020, and it was an incredibly tight race. To your point, she barely hung on to it by the skin of her teeth during the 2022 midterms, and the Democrats are definitely eyeing her seat as a top pickup opportunity as they try to regain control of the House. Boebert, she is seen as one of the most high-profile, one of the most far-right, conservative, outspoken, controversial members of the House, and the president right there going after Boebert in her own home territory. Now, she likely faces another rematch against Democratic candidate Adam Frisch. He had been seen as this long shot candidate, but it ended up being an incredibly tight race. And just in the last quarter, he raised 4 times as much money as Boebert did, Kana.
Well, and Biden has called out Republicans by name now for touting his policies while voting against them. But Biden physically being in their districts to call them out in the way that he did with her isn't something that he usually does.
Well, look, he's gearing up for a very tough 2024 re-election match, and we have seen the president and the campaign steadily amp up their aggressiveness in terms of directly targeting what they call these MAGA Republic extremists. And the campaign, they want to continue to draw that contrast. What they always say is to compare the President Biden to not the almighty, but to the alternative. So they want to draw that contrast between the president who is touring this facility, showing the growth in jobs, versus what they paint as these extremist Republicans that are all about chaos and infighting. And so the president sees Lauren Boebert and the Democratic campaign. They see Lauren Boebert as really being emblematic of that extreme MAGA Republican side. So that's why you're seeing the president directly go after Boebert. And we've seen the White House say that MAGA extremists like Lauren Boebert, they are trying to repeal some of the legislative accomplishments of the president, including the Inflation Reduction Act. the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, and they say what they want to do would actually hurt their own community. So there's an understanding when I talk to the Biden campaign that they cannot just run this campaign by touting the president's own legislative accomplishments. They also have to draw that contrast because, as we've seen from those low polling numbers, directly calling out the president's economic record, that's not resonating with voters.
And in fact, to your point, Selena, Lauren Boebert posting recently, noting that he toured the CS wind factory, and she said it has Bidenomics emblazoned all over it. She said Bidenomics is costing every American $11,000 more in expenses every year, and that working class families in her district deserve better. So that was really her response to all of that. But Selena, as you know, this trip that he was supposed to go on was actually delayed because of the war. And today, we know that President Biden had been driving by some protests there. That's something that he has to deal with all along the campaign trail as this conflict continues.
Exactly. I mean, he's dealing with that pretty much everywhere he goes. When I was at a recent campaign event he went to in Chicago, we saw those protesters along the streets. I mean, the president, however, he has shifted his tone considerably since the beginning of this war, going from this full-throttled support of Israel and its right to defend itself to more concretely calling out Israel, saying they need to restrain their military campaign. In fact, U.S. officials recently issuing their strongest warning yet to Israel that they need to be more surgical in their approach in order to avoid more Palestinians from being displaced and from worsening this humanitarian crisis. But look, the White House and the campaign officials, when I talk to them, they don't seem all too concerned about this. The campaign officials say, look, we are still a year out. A lot could change in that time frame, and they continue to dismiss the polling, including the polling that shows more disaffection from young voters and from Muslim American voters. But again, the campaign continually, every time I press them on the numbers, they keep on saying, look, we're a year out.
We're a year out. Well, that year will come fast. Selena Wang, our thanks to you as always. Coming up next here, we have some top stories to go over with you. Question for you, is he a man? Or do you consider him a medical miracle? Could Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers actually be back on a practice field this week?
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital, destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Give it to me. Give it to me.
Tonight, finding and freeing all the hostages in Gaza. What will it take? Plus, tracking the bitter cold sweeping across the country. More Americans turn to the most watched program on television. World News Tonight with David Muir.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We've seen tank after tank pouring into this area.
This is where it all began.
Bullet holes all up the wall.
Within minutes, the air raid sirens going off.
You can hear the sound of an explosion.
We are pinned down here.
Tonight, Israel waging a fierce bombardment of Gaza.
The Israel-Hamas War. For nonstop live coverage, stream ABC News Live.
Reporting from southern Israel. From the front lines.
In downtown Ramallah.
In Beirut.
Wherever the story is, we'll take you there.
ABC News Live.
From America's #1 news source comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter. And it can customize to you and your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience what all the buzz is about. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Reporting from the Capitol, I'm Rachel Scott. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
And welcome back. Some other stories that we're following for you this evening. Actor Jonathan Majors on trial in New York, charged with assault and harassment. The star was arrested last year after his then-girlfriend claimed that he twisted her arm and hit her head and pushed her. Majors has claimed that he was actually assaulted by her. If convicted, he faces up to a year in prison. Also, some sad news. Legendary Broadway actress and Tony Award winner Frances Sternhagen has died. The actress died of natural causes a month and a half shy of her 94th birthday. TV viewers might remember her for her reoccurring roles as Cliff's mother on Cheers and also Charlotte's hated mother-in-law on Bunny in Sex and the City. I remember her in that role. Also, 4 years after a fire destroyed the Notre Dame spire in Paris, French officials say that reconstruction is going fast enough, actually, to allow its reopening to visitors at the end of 2024. The cathedral's iconic spire, which collapsed in the blaze, will gradually start reappearing above the monument this year in a powerful signal of its return. Also, a little bit of good news for Jets fans. So Aaron Rodgers is closer to launching what could be an incredible comeback. The New York Jets announcing that they opened a 21-day practice window for the quarterback. Today, this is exactly 11 weeks after he had surgery to repair a torn Achilles. So the Jets can now decide whether to activate Rodgers from the injured reserve list on December 20th, 4 days before they face the Washington Commanders. That would be amazing. We have a lot more news ahead here on ABC News Live. In today's big story, the last planned group of hostages released in Gaza as negotiators race to extend the fragile truce agreement. What's at stake for Israel and Hamas just hours before the current deal is set to expire. Also in our spotlight, the artificial intelligence fumble for Sports Illustrated. Our panel weighs in on the accusations that the magazine wasn't being honest about who was writing its articles.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
When the announcer calls my name, the world almost fades away.
It's the biggest, it's the most famous dog event there is.
Welcome to Crufts, the world's greatest dog show.
The competition in dog dancing is very stiff.
Here, every dog has its day on the dance floor.
Dancing with my dog is the closest thing to magic.
Our winner of Crufts 2023.
The Secret Life of Dancing Dogs, now streaming on Hulu.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Tonight, finding and